So we're looking at Statistics Canada, and we're looking at the gross domestic product at basic prices in primary industries. I want to bring you over to 2014. I want to show you something here. You see where it says mining, quarrying, oil, and gas extraction? Okay, look at the amount of revenue that was generated. So 138,785 times a million. So that's 138 billion, $785 million was generated through the mining, quarrying, and oil and gas extraction for the year 2014. Now, if you go back, you'll see the numbers, but I stuck with here for the year 2014 because it shows you how much they're actually pulling out from natural resources from the land of Canada. We're looking into the source of revenue for the federal Canadian government. Now, if you look here for the year 2009, I couldn't find the other chart. They don't make it very easily available upon the internet. If you look at 2009, you'll see the revenue that they declared was $585 billion, $799 million as their own source of revenue. Now, where did they get this revenue? Where did they get all these billions of dollars? Okay, they declared that $248 billion of this revenue was collected through income taxes. So they took this money from you and I, from people who are out there exercising their right to work because they've been forced to, and then subsequently being taxed as an officer of Canada. Now, in personal income taxes, it was 189 billion. In corporate income taxes, it was 50 billion. Now look, mining and lodging taxes, you see that? They only charged them $1,747 million. That's not too fair, is it? We'll talk more about that as this video goes on. So again, property taxes, you own a piece of property, your house taxes, general property taxes, they collected $48 billion, $188 million off the individuals. Consumption taxes, when you go buy your food and your clothing, they collected $107 billion, $150 million total in consumption taxes. Now, as you keep going down this list, you're going to see individual items, such as here, contributions to Social Security. $35 billion, $404 million were taken from the people. Motor vehicle licenses, $3 billion, $557 million. Natural resource taxes, remember that those mining companies up there, and licenses, $1 billion, $652 million. And I'll just show you the rest of the list because there's another big one here. From their investment income, they generated $54 billion, the Canadian government. And from sales of goods and services, they generated $53 billion. So when you look, the motor vehicle licenses that we are paying for as individuals, and we understand that they're claiming that we're operating in a commercial capacity, we're paying $3 billion. They're generating revenue of $3 billion for that. But yet, for their natural resources, the licenses for these companies to mine and take away the $138 billion that we saw, they're only charging them $1,700 million in licenses. And then again, they took out $138 billion of revenue, and then they're only taxed upon that $1,747 million. But look at the individuals who live in Canada. Look how they are taxed compared to this company. The Crown is allowing the mining and logging and oil industry to strip Canada of its natural resources, and only a few individuals are profiting from this. So look at these numbers. The revenue for Canada, $585 billion for 2009. Now, $248 billion of that came from income tax. And the rest of all this is generated how? Off of us, off of you and me, through consumption taxes, such as sales taxes and gasoline taxes, alcohol taxes, such as contributions to Social Security plans, when they make you make a contribution when you fill out your income tax at the end of the year, such as motor vehicle licenses, such as sales of goods and services, interest on investments. That's not so bad. So they take our money They make investments and they make interest on it, and then they make revenue. But they don't let us use that revenue. But most of this revenue is taken where? Off the backs of the individuals, off of men and women who are just trying to earn a simple living, to have a life here in Canada. $585 billion. That's what's being generated for a revenue. We're looking at what it costs to run the health and social services here in Canada, throughout Canada. Now, if you look, it says they have a total revenue. That's what they're bringing in 2009 of $80 billion. Okay, so it cost $80 billion to run the health and social services here in Canada. From that $80 billion, $12 billion is generated from its own source of revenue. It generates its own money, the health industry, through sales of goods and services, through investment income, and through other revenue from other sources. So they're generating, of that $80 billion, $12 billion on their own. The rest is transferred to them from the government. Here you see, transfer from other levels of government, $67 billion, close to $68 billion per year. They get $7 billion from federal, and then 67 from provincial. That goes in to the healthcare. So in total, they're generating revenue of $80 billion. Now their total expenditures of the year for 2009 was $80 billion, give or take a few $100 million. Now remember that $67 billion of this was generated from the government. We're looking at the public sector, employment, wages, and salaries. We're actually looking at all of Canada as a whole. And when we look to what Canada is paying to run the government, we see that it's indicated $194,193,338,000. That's what's being dished out, paid out to run this government, the offices and the structure and so forth. This is just for salaries. This is not for infrastructure. This is for salaries, wages, and salaries. So every year, the government is transferring out of the Consolidated Revenue Fund into the health and social services about $68 billion. And the government is also paying workers salary and wages to the tune of $194 billion, which is nearly 3 times the amount that they transfer to health and social services. Now, this amount of $194 billion, it doesn't include buildings, cars, army vehicles, the private airplanes that they fly on, the residences that they keep. This is just for their salary. When you look at the revenue that the government generated, we saw most of it was taxation. It came from personal income tax, corporate income tax, general property taxes, consumption taxes, motor vehicle licenses, sales of goods and services. In the list that we looked at, that's where they generated all this revenue. And from this revenue here, revenue that they took off of our backs, they're putting this amount, $194 billion, to government workers and salaries, excluding the infrastructure that they have. And they're dropping only $67 billion into health and social services. Now this includes welfare, last resort, all those type of infrastructures that reflect health and social services. That's what they're dropping into it. That's a total of $261 billion for the year, give or take. So there's $224 billion left. If all these years lined up, because as you saw, they don't show us all these years, but generally these numbers will remain the same. The principle remains the same. Okay? They're taxing and they're taking from the people in many ways. Income tax, what are they doing? They're declaring that you're the officer of Canada, and they're taxing you on personal income tax and corporate income tax. And what are they doing for motor vehicle licenses to generate that revenue, saying you're operating in a commercial capacity? They're generating all this revenue off of the backs of the individuals who are simply seeking to earn or gain a living because they've been forced to by the government, because the government stripped them of their rights and force them to use the right to work. And they're out there and they're being taxed. And now once they're being taxed, the government is having a party with their money. Now again, you look at the mining, coring, and oil and gas extraction industry. They generated a revenue of $138 billion. How would you like to make that amount of money? Wouldn't that be wonderful? But let me tell you something. These industries that the Crown is allowing to strip all the resources from the land, whether it's oil, whether it's gas, diamonds, or gold, these natural resources, they don't belong to the Crown. Her Majesty the Queen has no right to claim that they belong to her and her alone. She has made a claim out there that said God has allowed her to claim all the resources and all the land and all these things, and that she should be the steward on our behalf. That's not how you get your freedom in law, but nevertheless, that's how they built it up in the law. That's what she claimed. And here the Crown is allowing private corporations to strip this land of the natural resources. You see it here, $138 billion. When a part of that resources is yours. A part of that $138 billion belongs to you. And what's that for? For you to have an adequate living. So you don't have to go and produce your own living and earn your own living and be forced to use your right to work. That's what the resources of this land was to do, so we could consume and live, not for the Crown to steal it through a few corporations. So they go and they let these corporations make this revenue, $138 billion. And what are they taxed for that? They made this huge amount of revenue. What do they get taxed? $1,747 million. Like 2 pennies. Okay, like a $20 bill from their paycheck. They got taxed. Not even. Ridiculous. When the personal income tax level for 2009 was $189 billion. $189 billion they took away from individuals who were seeking to earn a living for themselves and their family. And they took away $50 billion from corporations. Those are just individuals now who are not employees, who own corporations. And what are they trying to do? They're trying to earn a living for themselves and their family. But still the government took $50 billion away from them. And here the Crown allows private corporations, a certain number of individuals, to strip away the natural resources that belong to you and me to the tune of $138 billion and tax them simply $1,747 million. Now when we look, this is sad what's going on here in Canada, if you understand. The gasoline tax that they're taking from individuals. When you're out there in your motor vehicle, there are laws declaring that you are partaking in commerce, that you are engaged in the transportation of passengers or property. And when you go fill up your gas tank, when they tax you, this $13,528 million that they generate, they're supposed to use that to fix the roads and keep the roads in repair and upkeep them. So this is ridiculous what's going on. And a lot of people ask when they come to understand about their natural rights and their fundamental rights, and hey, you mean as a man or a woman I have the right to consume? And then the next question that comes up usually is, well, if everyone was consuming, if everyone was invoking their right to a patrimony or the right to an adequate living, how would we be able to subsidize this? Okay, well, let's look. For 1 year, right? Just 1 year, okay? They allowed private corporations. Look at this number here, everybody. The gig is up, but look at the number here. They allowed the private corporations to take $138 billion out, right? And they taxed them $1,747 million. Well, what if we didn't let these resources go? What if we did what we were supposed to do and say, no, these belong to the individuals, the men and women of the land. And this extraction that we're doing, there'd be a price, there'd be a cost to extract these minerals, but we still generate the revenue. So let's say we had $125 billion instead. Well, we could dump that $67 billion into health and social services, right? And still have $65 billion left. You see where our support can come from? But they're not doing that. They're giving this away that belongs to the people, that belongs to the human beings, that belong to the men and the women. They're giving the natural resources away to a few, and they're charging income tax, corporation tax, property taxes, and the like, running the government, and then making you pay for this health and social systems. That's what they're doing. That's exactly what they're doing. And the numbers do not lie. You see it here. Why do the mining companies are allowed to strip the resources to this amount of money and then only return to us this amount of money? They shouldn't even be allowed to be taking this. It's not yours to take, sir. It's not yours to take, ma'am. It's not yours to take, government. It belongs to all of us. All of us. Not you alone. But you take it through private corporations and enrich yourself. And you put the people into slavery. You put the people into servitude to you. And you tax them. And you take from them. And you say, you must give your part, ma'am. You must give your part, sir. It's a social system. Mutual benefit. Come on, do your part. They guilt trip you when all along they're robbing from you. And you don't even realize what's going on.